Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Tucker, and welcome to Console Room Presents Do It Yourself Live, Time of the Doctor. We are going to be talking about Doctor Who board games and role-playing games tonight. Meanwhile, I hope you've been enjoying all the other Do It Yourself Live events we've had this week, like the Console Room radio players doing an audio play rendition of Galaxy 4. And later this evening, we'll be having a game of Doctor Who Jeopardy. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our illustrious panel of Doctor Who role-playing and board game experts. And we'll go ahead and start with Nick Seidler. Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at this Console Room event. Very happy to be here. My name is Nick Seidler. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have been very involved in Doctor Who role-playing games for many years, since the FASA Doctor Who game came out in about 1985. And I've been running an ongoing campaign of that game for 30 plus years, which is kind of fun. I've been very active in Doctor Who fandom. I've written or contributed to some books. On my spare time, I contribute to some role-playing games and do some editing and writing for role-playing game companies.
And I am a regular player in Nick's Doctor Who campaign, have been for about the last 7 years. I am the lead game room manager at Chicago TARDIS. Every year we help create cool fan-made board games. We've also debuted them at Console Room a couple of times. And I help out on some writing projects. I have written for Outside In Takes a Stab, and just an overall Doctor Who and RPG fan.
Great, thanks, Libby. John, let's have you introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Till. I live in Minneapolis, and I think I've been gaming Doctor Who for about 12 to 16 years, somewhere in that time frame. But I've been buying Doctor Who games since the 70s, or perhaps the early 80s when the first one came out. I'm part of the Saturday Night Space Opera group, which you can find at saturdaynightspaceopera.blogspot.com, which is a Twin Cities-based science fiction gaming group. It's one of the venues where I do run Doctor Who games periodically.
Great, thank you. This is mostly a free-form conversation, talking about Doctor Who RPGs and board games from Who It Yourself board games, homebrew board games, to some of the commercial releases, if we want to talk about those. And please, anyone who is on YouTube, go ahead and ask some questions in the chat, and I will relay them to our panelists. Let's start by talking about the Doctor Who role-playing games, the various versions. Nick, you've been playing. You've been running a game for 30 plus years. Has it been the same system the whole time, or have you changed systems as new ones have come out with the same campaign?
It's a great question. The campaign started using the original FASA Doctor Who role-playing game, which was this one, which was released in 1985. And over the years that we've been playing, we've used some of the other systems as well. In like 1990 or 91, a game called Time Lord came out. And so we've used this for some of the games that we've played. And then I'm pretty sure that John has a copy of the Cubicle 7 game handy. We've also used those rules when we played in our long ongoing campaign. What we've eventually done, we kind of found a homebrew system that works for us. So just like Gary Gygax said, don't follow these rules exactly, follow what works for your group. And so what we did was we kind of took some of the best parts of all the things that we liked, and in our current game, we kind of have our own sheets and rules that work for our system, but we've really used them all. So yeah, they're all good games. If anybody gets a hold of any of the 3 Doctor Who role-playing games, I would say there's nothing more enjoyable than running your own adventures and experiencing your own Doctor Who adventures in your mind's eye. I mean, that's one of the most fun things. If you love Doctor Who, live it, you know, so.
Great. Libby, how has it been playing in a campaign run by Nick?
It's been a lot of fun. Nick actually introduced me to role playing about 7 years ago now, and I've been playing with his main campaign ever since. He allows me to guest GM every once in a while, including doing some character arcs that have impacted our players. It's been a lot of fun, and the system that we run in now is that homebrew version, and it's a lot more freeing rules wise than a lot of the other systems. You know, a couple other Doctor Who campaigns, a little bit of D&D, but the rule set that we kind of go with in our home group is very palatable for new players and very easy to pick up for new GMs. And for more advanced players, you get to experience more of the storytelling aspect and not just the number crunching that most players enjoy. So it's been a lot of fun.
Great. John, you have GM'd a lot of different systems. I know that, not just Doctor Who. How has it been GMing the Adventures in Time and Space compared to some of the other systems that you GM?
Great question. To it as Traveler, because its base mechanics are very similar to one of the first science fiction role-playing games that ever existed. You roll 2d6s and you add some points for skills and you try to hit a target. I mean, that's not exactly the way Traveler works, but that is the way Doctor Who Adventures Against Time and Space works. And like many modern games, it also has points which you can use to, you can spend them to kind of make things happen differently than the dice said they would. Put things is really designed for campaign play, because when I run one shots of it, it seems like there's too many of those story points and they don't get used. So the next time I run it, I'm going to go really sparse with the story points and make characters earn more of them through doing crazy things at the game table. But I really like that system, and you know, all of the not quite all the Doctor Who games I've run have used it, because I've also used a version of Fate called Kerberos Club, where you play these sort of weird Victorian superheroes. And in that game, they did encounter a Time Lord who was a character called the Judge that was created by my friend Rachel Cronick in the first Doctor Who role-playing adventure we ever did. So when I ran a Fate game that was set in the Victorian period, I had the Judge appear. So that was kind of fun.
What kind of response have you gotten from people who have played other games coming into play in the Doctor Who universe? And that's a question for all three of you.
I'll let John.
Go ahead, John, or whoever wants to start. Go ahead.
Well, I think if people have played something other than D&D, they're not going to have a problem with Doctor Who. And the nice thing about Doctor Who, kind of like a Star Trek role-playing game or the Alien role-playing game, is that if you know the genre, you can pick it up, right? And Doctor Who has also, you know, there are iconic characters, there are iconic Time Lords. People usually have their favorite Time Lord. Then there are companions that are really well known. And then there are the lesser known companions like Ace that, you know, a green anarchist friend wanted to play once. So I think it's an easy game to pick up if you know the genre.
Mm-hmm. I'll add something to that. One of the things that I really love about the Doctor Who role-playing game is that you can play any story and any kind of adventure in the Doctor Who universe, right? So if you want to play a D&D medieval style game that maybe has technology as magic in it, play a D&D game in that, right? So you go back in time, or maybe you go to the far future and you go to platform 1, or maybe you go to an alternate universe, right? You can do that, like where time was different and Kennedy wasn't assassinated or something, right? So the Doctor Who game allows you to play any role-playing adventure. And one of the things that I even recommend to a lot of people is don't limit yourself just to the resources for the Doctor Who game. Pick up a D&D module, a Paranoia game, a Call of Cthulhu, whatever it is, and adapt that adventure to your Doctor Who campaign. And to me, that's one of the funnest things about playing in the Doctor Who game is you, as a player, literally do not know where you might be when you step out of the TARDIS to the next game. So
going off of that, even just because it's a Doctor Who based role playing game doesn't mean you can't introduce other fandoms either. So we've played in, you know, stories where we get to go to Hogwarts and we get to be students or professors and deal with everything that's going on there. Or, you know, we might head over to Hyrule with Legend of Zelda, or, you know, insert whatever fandom you enjoy. You can do it. You have a time machine that travels through space and time. You can do literally anything.
That kind of leads into my question. You know, this is a role-playing game based on an IP. So, you know, do you play in the universe, or do you play characters, established characters? Do you have someone playing the Doctor? Do you have people, John, you mentioned that someone wanted to play Ace. I question whether, you know, she's not well known, you know, but do you have people playing established companions and such? How has that worked out for you? Go ahead, John.
Well, for me, the first Doctor Who campaign I started, and I know this because I was looking at the binder this afternoon and it said first Doctor Who campaign, was Rachel Cronick's character, the judge, with her, and the judge is like a very stern Time Lord who likes everything in its proper place in time and has a device called the Key of Time, which can basically zap things back to their proper place in time. So that's what she does with her TARDIS. And then one of the companions was a Torchwood operative, and another was basically a pirate. And the fourth companion, or the fourth player, played this sentient algae goop that would pour itself into different bioframes, is the best that I can describe this character. So that's kind of how my first campaign started. When I do one shots, I often give people companions that I think they're likely to know, as well as some, you know, canonical companions that they may be less likely to know. And I usually stick with Time Lords from the recent series, like in the last 20 years. So that's kind of how I do it. How do other people do it?
in our campaign, we play all original characters within the Doctor Who universe. So we have our own Time Lord who has his own TARDIS, and at least he's a he now. So who travels back and forth through time and space, and a number of people live inside his TARDIS as ongoing characters. And the majority of those characters are all original. But we do play within the Doctor Who universe, so if something happens in the show, so like when the Time War happened and we discovered that when the show came back on the air in 2005, suddenly Gallifrey was destroyed and all of our storylines fit the Doctor Who universe. And then when Gallifrey came back, Gallifrey was back. So like we could have some stories that dealt with different Time Lords and things like that. That's just how we play. Sort of like what John says, sometimes for one shots that happen at conventions and things like that, it is good to have the framework of the show. So sometimes having some of the characters that people know from the series, or even if you're running with original characters, having something like a villain, or like you have to save the Doctor or something, so that people know that there's a direct connection to the series. Though we have a very creative group of game masters, and in our campaign, while I run the campaign, I let any player who wants to run a game do so, and they are very creative and come up with a lot of their own bad guys and stuff. And I'll actually turn it over to Libby to maybe talk about that experience. So
Yeah, so like you said, he allows many of us to run games in his campaign. I don't believe many of us actually run anything from a source book necessarily. A lot of what we end up running are, based on songs, based on dreams, based on real life experiences, real life things that are happening currently. So we do a lot of custom work, including majority of our characters. Though we do take inspiration for characters from, different media outlets because it's what we enjoy. But yeah, going along the line of the cons or the one shots, usually when I run con modules, it'll be with one of the current doctors, with the new series doctor, because when at Chicago TARDIS, when we're running games, it's majority is younger to teenage players, so they know a lot of the new Who stuff. So we've run with 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th doctors before. And usually at Chicago TARDIS especially, we'll do a character creation panel each morning before any of the role-playing game starts. So if they don't want to use one of our pre-gen characters, they can come in and create something of their own. And then any of the role-playing games we have later that day, they can use that character. Basically, when they're done with the character creation, it's been signed off by our GMs and said, yes, you can use this character. We've balanced it enough that it's not going to break anything that we're doing, but it allows them to be even more immersed. And we usually have, 2 to 3 stories running, throughout the weekend. So if they wanted to play in multiple games, it's not a repeat of what they've already done. So.
Very nice, very nice. Speaking of game balance, I am thinking of an experience I had one time playing a Buffy RPG, and I actually played Buffy, and it was the regular characters, Buffy and the Scooby Gang, and it was very basically my character Buffy was way overpowered compared to the others. Is there any issue with the Time Lord characters being overpowered compared to the companions? Go ahead, Libby.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm excited to answer that question. I've found that when I hand the doctor out as a character at a convention, that almost all the other players will go, okay, what should we do, doctor? And it can really depend on how strong that player is as a role player, and that can be hit or miss. And nothing against anybody who plays the doctor who maybe it's their first time role playing or they're not as experienced with that character. What I've found works better is I usually for my convention games, put the doctor in peril so that everybody's on even footing and they have to rescue the doctor. And suddenly there's an intentional goal and nobody automatically looks at the doctor and goes, now what do we do, right? So they have to find it in themselves. I think, we know, like Russell Davis said, it's the show's really about the companions, right? Not about the doctor. They travel the world and see things because he brings them along, but it's their story. And I think that works the best in the role-playing games that I've observed. But I'd love to hear what John and Libby's experiences are.
Yeah, agreed. If you put the doctor or a generic Time Lord into the hands of some of your players, it definitely has the opportunity to unbalance your group, especially for con modules where you're trying to make sure everybody's having a good time, everyone's having equal opportunity to kind of get in that role playing. That can really upset that. But another thing that we found is people are very creative in their solutions, especially if you put a Time Lord in their hands. So they can, as a game master, they can very easily break your module if you allow them to play a Time Lord, which can have outstanding consequences. Do not get me wrong, but it's also a very frantic battle at that point of the game master and the players to have a really good game that everybody can be happy with.
I haven't had big problems at the table with power balance in the sense of the character as it exists on the sheet. Time Lords are definitely more powerful than companions. And that being said, I think the bigger problem that I would think would happen if I ran even more Doctor Who games is the same problem. I run a lot of the Star Trek Adventures 2D20 RPG, and I have an ongoing all LGBT player campaign on the USS Alan Turing. And that's worked out really well, having a player character as the captain. But let me tell you, you go to conventions and you have somebody be the captain or the Time Lord, and they can kind of freeze, and not want to take the responsibility, or, everybody picks another character except the Time Lord. Okay, so we go with that. But yeah, I think the mechanically, definitely the Time Lord is very powerful. So you have to have some adversaries that can challenge that Time Lord. And you also have to have somebody who can take that character and knows that part of their role is to let the other player shine, right? With the rules that they have.
Very nice, very nice. Let's shift a little bit and talk about some non-RPG Doctor Who games. Nick and Libby both have made a whole passel of homemade Doctor Who games. And Nick, I know you ran out and got a number of them so that you can kind of show them off. Let's start by talking about how and why you decided to try making your own Doctor Who role-playing games. Or not role-playing, but Doctor Who board games.
Sure. I would say about maybe 10, maybe even 15 years ago, I would say that the renaissance of gaming started, kind of refired, and not just within role-playing games, but a lot of gaming became very mainstream in the last 10 years. And at the Chicago TARDIS convention, we were discovering that we had a room that was dedicated to people just going to relax in that room. And we discovered that as people were going to relax, some of them were bringing their own games, right? And so they would game there. And we were like, this is a Doctor Who convention. We can do this. I have designed games professionally and worked on some of them. And then a number of people that I know, to include Libby and some of our other friends, including people at Chicago TARDIS and some of the people that helped organize that event, like Steve Hill and Rob Warnock, some of those guys. We had game design experience, so we decided, why don't we make some games that are Doctor Who games? And in some cases, we reskin existing games so that, like, here's a Doctor Who version of Connect 4, or here's a Doctor Who version of Love Letters that a friend of ours, Anna Koss, made, right? But then we also knew that we had it in us to make original games as well. And so after our first year or two of just skinning some games into Doctor Who versions, we started making some originals, and it's proved to be very popular. And I have some here, but I'd really like Libby to talk a little bit about this too, because she and her husband have actually made a lot of the more recent games, and I'd like for her to be able to chime in as well. So
go ahead, Libby.
Yeah, so when we joined up with Chicago TARDIS, we joined up primarily in the game room, and we were just, workers helping people learn how to play some of the games. At that point, we had, maybe a handful of custom games and a lot more, professionally created Doctor Who versions of games. But we enjoyed playing what had been created. So we kind of put those out, and we, put them in the hands of the people and said, hey, look what we've created. Like, would you like to come play this? Very soon, not soon after I started with Chicago TARDIS, I think, Nick, you and Anna and I helped a little bit. Alex helped. We had created the Rory Adventure game, which I think you have there. It's big. It is big. It basically follows Rory's timeline from start to finish, jumping backwards and forwards through time. Very basic mechanics, but if you have a large enough group, it can take over an hour to play. I think we have like 2 or 3 like long 6-foot tables that this has to be laid out on. It's that big. But it's a lot of fun, and we found that a lot of the people love playing it. At the last in-person con, actually, we had Arthur Darvill come and play the game, which was an amazing experience.
Nice.
We got to see him experience it, and I think we gave him a copy. He said he had fun, which made us feel all the more better. And then, you know, starting from about 2015 onwards, whenever we had a larger guest come, we would try and make some form of game based on their character. That way, if they came into the game room, they heard about it, they come and play it with us. What's the one that you've got there, Nick?
John Leeson was at Chicago TARDIS like a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago, sorry, with COVID. So we made a special canine game. Okay. So, and it was pretty straightforward and fun. This was definitely aimed more at sort of a younger crowd. This is the kind of roll the dice. If you jump on somebody, they go back, you go forward. You know, there's shortcuts, lose a turn spots. But this was the canine game that we made when John Leeson came to the convention. Very simple, fun, simple fold-up style board game that people can enjoy in the room. The like Rory Adventure game with Arthur Darvill is the kind of game that young people like to play because they can just come and play for a while and move forward and backwards. And I do want to mention, just because Libby had brought it up, that on the Chicago TARDIS Facebook page, you can actually go there and watch him play the full game. And the way we did it was, while he played the game, we interviewed him about the locations that he stopped at on his timeline. So what do you remember about the Amy's Choice, you know, game? Or how did this work for you? Did you know that you were going to die in the show so many times or not? So it was kind of fun. But we've also kind of done other things, and I'll turn this back over to Libby. But an example, we have some slightly more complex games. So we did like a game called The Power of Three, which we made with original cards. And the cards have like characters that you need to like collect and stuff like that. And the goal is you want to collect 3 of those cards together in your hand, but you can only hold, I think, 3 cards at a time. And then if you have to discard as you draw, and if you see a discard from somebody else, you can play a cube card to get that card and pick it up out of the discard pile. But somebody can also play the Legend of Shakri card on you and block you picking that up to prevent your getting the Power of Three, or those 3 cards that you retire for points. So we do card games, we do board games, we do dice games. And Libby, you should talk about dice games. So
yeah, so we've or was it 2 years ago, I think? I'm so lost on time. My husband Brandon actually created a game based on the episode Kerblam, and he created a full-on Kerblam box with it. Still in its like beta testing phases, but we had it at the last in-person Chicago TARDIS. That was our main like debut game. So like I said, we try and debut a new game every year. That was 2019's game. It's a lot of fun. It uses one of like the trouble poppers to roll dice. It's just a lot of fun to play, honestly. But one of the more in-depth games I think we've come up with in the last couple of years is actually called Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. And that is all custom rules, custom board. It's not as big as the Rory Adventure game, but the board game itself, like the board itself, still takes up like one of the very large like circular tables that you would find. And that one actually, requires a game master to play because there's so many in-depth rules and so many different strategies to come up with to play. The coolest part though is that it's fully co-op, which we as gamers, being in the role-playing scenes, like we love co-op games. So we wanted to create, yeah, the cat. We wanted to create something that was fully co-op, and we've been playtesting that every year. And I think the last time we playtested it, I think we did so for probably 5 or 6 hours for one game, and it was super fun. We've yet to be able to play a full game of it. I think at the con, I think one group has sat down and played with us. But it's definitely something that when we get together to sit down and at least teach, our new staff members how to play the games, we sit down and teach them this game because it's so immersive and it's so exciting and so cooperative that it's just a lot of fun to play. It's the last one that we teach, and we say, like, if you have to go because you've got other commitments, that's fine, but we'd really like to sit and play this game with you.
Nice. I just want to send a call out to all the viewers. Go ahead and if you have questions, pop those into the YouTube chat so that we can get those questions to our panelists. And if any of you have comments about any Doctor Who games that you played, go ahead and share those as well. Let's talk a little bit about some of the commercial games that have been released. Have you played any of those? I can think of, there's the one that the last time I went to the Gallifrey convention, I finally got a chance to play and of course I'm forgetting the name, the one that has, I thought of it when you talked about dice. This is the one that has the dice that you collect based on your characters and such, if you recall which one that is.
Is that Time of the Daleks or Time Vortex?
Time of the Daleks, yeah. So have you, do any of you have any experience with any of the commercial releases?
Go ahead, Nick.
If it's okay, I'll answer that, you guys. Yeah, I'm a big game collector, period. So I try to collect all of the Doctor Who games that come out, regardless of how good or maybe not as strong as some of them are. It's hard not to buy like Doctor Who Trivial Pursuit or Doctor Who Yahtzee when they only run $20, $25. I highly recommend those because, hey, that's fun, right? But it can get a little bit more daunting if you're like looking at Doctor Who Risk and the box costs $60, $80, right? It's a little bit harder in terms of the entry for a game, right? And oddly, there are variations between the games. For example, if you buy the UK version of Doctor Who Risk, it has different miniatures and a different play and turn style than the American version of the Doctor Who Risk game, which most people would not expect, but they actually have different rules. But really quickly, like there's a Doctor Who Flux out there, Doctor Who Yahtzee, Doctor Who Trivial Pursuit, Doctor Who Clue, 4 versions of Doctor Who Monopoly in the United States. There's a lot of games there. That said, I think sometimes that the commercial companies, and I'm not ripping on them because they're actually good, and I'd rather have there be Doctor Who games than not, but they sometimes don't always understand Doctor Who, right? So it's a great idea to license a game to put Doctor Who on it, but when they first released Doctor Who Flux, for example, the only thing that was new in the game, other than it being the original Flux, was the introduction of Doctor cards. So, and before that game came out, and I do kind of want to hype this up, Libby had invented a version of Doctor Who Flux, which was completely customized. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Libby. So.
Sure. Yeah, right before they announced that they were releasing a Doctor Who Flux, earlier that year, I had been working on kind of our own fan-made version because I am a big fan of Flux. I enjoy it. So I grabbed the, original Starflux and started kind of piecing together how they kind of balanced it out. And then, said it would be great to have a Doctor Who version of this. And I wanted to keep it primarily to New Who, because again, the people that we're kind of catering to at Chicago TARDIS in the game room itself have more experience with the New Who. So I used some of the doctors. I didn't use all of them. It was more along the connections between the keepers and creepers of the connections that you would see in the show. So you may have, the sonic screwdriver, you may have the TARDIS, you may have the Doctor as a series of 3. And then you may have, for creepers, you may have like the Daleks, the Cybermen, a couple other villains. I think the Master might be in there. But it's a different balance than what the, official version of Doctor Who Flux would be. It plays differently, definitely plays differently. But they then came out with the Doctor Who Flux, and I'm like, okay. We do have a version of that at the game room itself, though. And for all of the official Doctor Who games, we do have a version of them in the game room. So people come in and say, yeah, I just want to play something I'm used to. I don't really want to play something new. It's like, okay, that's fine. We'll give you the game, and you're more than welcome to sit and play and use the tables. That's totally fine. But if you want to try something new, any of our new games are more than accessible to you, and we're happy to sit down.
I will mention that they did just recently release a 13th Doctor Flux expansion pack. So if you do like Flux, I believe that pack can be used in any version of Flux that you want to play, which is kind of neat. So, and I should ask John if he plays any of the commercial games. So
I only play role-playing games. I'm sorry to be a bore that way, but that's just how I roll.
I just want to say not a bore at all, right? Like, I would say that role-playing games are the pinnacle of gaming, right? So once you've gone through board games and you've got your share of card games, if you really want to get into a game that has no limitations, role-playing games is where it's at. So I appreciate that, John.
Well, now I kind of want to come to Chicago TARDIS convention and check out all these unique games. And I thought you guys are so creative. And I thought the idea of, before you run your role-playing game, give people a separate session where if they really want to create their own character, they can. That's also a good way to get people into a game, especially if they're new to it. If you can create something unique, even though you don't know that much about the canon, that's really good. But you guys are just so creative. It's really exciting to see.
That's a nice lead into a couple of questions that we've gotten. For your custom game, Chicago TARDIS is the only place to play these custom games, right? Super fascinated by these. And I should say, you have brought them to console room in the past. And so it basically only at conventions is where people are able to play them. Because you're not commercially producing them or anything like that.
Yeah, we obviously don't have a license for Doctor Who, so we cannot sell anything Doctor Who. These are really fan passion projects. We do bring these games to other conventions. So we've been to console room, a number of times. And we do hope to come back and do that once we can kind of have a in-person console room again, which we look forward to. And hope we can be there. Chicago TARDIS, we've played some of the games at. We've done some at Gallifrey 1 as well. Played some of them there. I will say that we have sort of a fan, passion fanzine that's out there called the Diary of Doctor Who Role-Playing Games, or DDW RPG, which is a great resource if you like Doctor Who role-playing games and you're looking for module ideas or rule ideas or interviews or reviews of games. It's a really great game. We haven't put out a fanzine recently, but even the old ones have amazing content. And I do bring that up because a lot of the games that we're talking about right now, we do release as like PDFs and just give them away free to fandom because we want people to play these games and enjoy them. So in our upcoming issue of the free fanzine, that's just a PDF release thing, we give away the games for free so people can enjoy them. And we want people to have fun playing these different games. Like it's a passion project for us. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Libby, too. So
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but the rules that we use for our homebrew RPG, as well as some of the story modules or story arcs, and I think maybe the character sheets are also in the fanzine.
Some of that content is there, yeah.
Okay.
And could you say where people can find the back issues of the fanzine again?
Sure. It can be found. The easiest way to find it is to search DDWRPG, or I recommend looking for the Earthbound Time Lords website. And the Earthbound Time Lords is sort of an academic website that John Curtis and myself run. It's home to the Scripts Project, the Doctor Who Fanzine Preservation Project, and a number of other things, including the Diary of Doctor Who role-playing games. You can find modules there and all the issues of the fanzine. So, and they're PDF downloads, so enjoy them, have fun, check them out.
Great. Another question we have on the RPGs. What is a good way for beginners to get started with these?
I'll have John start with that. So,
well, get some friends together. Get one of the RPGs and ask one of your friends to play it. And if you can't, or run it. And if you can't get them to run it, just sit down and read it and get it ready to run yourself. And don't be afraid to make mistakes with the rules. That happens every time you run a game. Conventions are great. Particularly role-playing conventions or Doctor Who themed conventions or science fiction conventions. Like a lot of general fandom conventions have a gaming track, but probably the mecca is just going to a gaming convention, because there's going to be a lot of different opportunities there, not just for the RPGs, but for the tabletop scene in general, variety of board games. The other thing is to go to a bricks and mortar game store and ask who's playing what in the store, put up a flyer. Like, these are kind of old school things, but these are how people make connections, and it works.
And of course, right now we do urge everyone to practice safety in terms of attending conventions, visiting stores,
yes,
take precautions during these trying times in which we live right now. When you are
vaccinated and wear a mask, because you don't have unlimited regenerations.
I'll add to that and
Nick.
say, go to some online role-playing forums and just ask, would anybody like to Doctor Who role-play with me, right? Or is there anybody here that has an interest in that? And we do have the advantage of Zoom and Google Hangouts and Microsoft Teams, so that we can connect virtually with people all over the world. And I think that's a fun and great way to do it. And I really want to emphasize to people, if you've never done a Doctor Who role-playing game before and you're like, oh, I would love to do this, all you need to do is buy one book, the basic rule book. And I just want everybody to know that you cannot do it wrong. Okay? Like, yes, there's some rules. And as long as you and your group are kind of following those rules to the best of your ability, you're going to have a blast just being with other people, socializing, and creating your own Doctor Who adventures. And I really just want to encourage you to try it and do it, because even if you think, I might be embarrassed if I'm the game master the first time, am I doing this right? Don't worry about that. Have fun. Everybody knows that's the main thing. When I first met Libby, she had never played a game, any role-playing game before. She now regularly runs games, and even helps run a game room at a convention. So Libby, maybe I'll ask you how that works. So
Yeah. Friendly local game stores, they'll be able to help out. I think it would be safe enough to say that if you're really, really interested and you really can't find a game master, I'm sure any one of us would be willing to run a game for you and help you experience it. And at least help, find and connect with other gamers that we know. Gen Con coming up, either online, they've got another online this year. You can try out new games there. Highly recommend. That's how I spend my Gen Con, is learning new role-playing games and board games and card games out there. You know, Chicago TARDIS, Console Room, Gallifrey One, any of the console or any of the conventions that would, have a game room. Stop in, say hi, chat them up and see, if they have any experience either running something like that. And if you can't find anybody to run a Doctor Who specific like system game, find someone that would be willing to run something else and make it Doctor Who themed.
Sure. Do any of you have any experience doing Doctor Who on a platform like Roll20? Is that a viable option for people to play online?
Sure. I mean, we play, Saturday Night Space Opera Group, since the pandemic started, we pivoted to running games on Zoom, and that still is the main platform we use. So extremely light in terms of a virtual tabletop. It's basically seeing people's faces, maybe having a die roller, but the Doctor Who role-playing game that I run just uses D6s, and those are pretty easy for people to find. So that works perfectly well. I mean, it was absolutely heartbreaking last December when I had a game ready to run and I didn't have players, and it was just a little too obscure. Like, I had a lot of success for the Saturday Night Space Group in person running a Return to Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. That went pretty well. People said there weren't enough dinosaurs, but there you go. But I was going to run a Return to Peladon game, and it was just like nobody knew what Peladon was, and I wanted to cry because, the third Doctor was my Doctor. So I had something just great with just come on, there's Daleks here and Ice Warriors, you're use Discord for tabletop role playing, and a lot of people are using Roll20 and other things where there's a board to move on. I've got a question for my colleagues here, if it's okay to ask one.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
I missed out on buying all those wonderful
bunch of minis. Some minis are still available. So it's hard to find the FASA miniatures, which were made by FASA and in the UK from the 1980s game. But every still has some sets of those minis. So if you just give them a call and say, hey, do you have Doctor Who minis? They'll probably say yes. In the 90s, there was another set of miniatures that kind of came out. I think Black Tree Miniatures is the group that, and they still sell their old stock. So there's still some Doctor Who minis that are kind of putzing around out there. There's Gale Force 9 and the Time of the Daleks game, which I think in the UK may be called the Exterminate game, currently makes miniatures, and you can actually I have some just out of arm's reach here. Hold on one second. Sorry, but they make Autons and a Sea Devil set that you can get.
Ooh.
So these are currently in production. So definitely check it out.
On the back of the box, do they have what they look like?
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow, that's cool.
And they're very nice minis, actually. And I highly recommend their doctor sets, actually, because the Gale Force 9 Warlord Games is the other company that makes those, makes great sets. So I highly recommend them. So,
And there was a miniatures game that was released.
yes, yep.
And what was that like?
It's okay. Technically, the Time of the Daleks and Exterminate game uses cards to travel around the board, but they make minis for that game, if that makes sense. So, I don't know if all the games are really, or all the minis are actually that useful for that game, but I get the minis so that I have them for Doctor Who role-playing games, if that makes sense, right? So, I will mention, like, if you buy the Risk game, the Risk game comes with like probably like 50 Dalek miniatures that are the right scale for like role-playing games. So that's like kind of a simple cheat, if you will, right? And then there was another mini game that was out there a number of years ago called Micro Miniatures, and they basically came out with a number of different miniatures that were pre-molded and painted. Here's just a couple examples of them. So, and you can find those, and it was a game where there were stats on the base of it, and you were supposed to like see if your stats beat somebody else's stats. The single best part of that game, which I need to share with you, is the fact that each set of that game came with their own special die that looks like this.
Oh wow!
And
oh my goodness!
It's literally a die where you spin the die and it falls onto one side, and then that's the number. I'm really bad at doing this. I'm definitely not like a. So you can kind of see what the dice look like.
Yep.
Super cool, kind of neat to check out. I believe that was called the Micro Miniatures set. So.
We are coming right about to the end here. Why don't we close with some closing comments from all three of you? Well, we had one other question that can go to Nick and Libby. If someone is thinking of creating their own Doctor Who or any board card or whatever game, do you have any advice? And we can use that to lead into closing comments from everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Pick your theme. If you want to do it centered around a doctor, if you want to do it centered around a companion or a story, pick that and then kind of build it from there. We kind of explained Journey to Center of the TARDIS. Obviously, that's based on, the episode. And we took a lot of elements from the episode to build up this incredible game. Flux, I started off with a game that I enjoyed and said there really should be a Doctor Who version of it, which the universe agreed. But start with something that you're passionate about, either from the game space or from the Doctor Who space, and kind of build it up from there.
I'll add to that. Like, if you want to design your own games, keep your game simple. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they over-engineer or overcomplicate a game, okay? There's a game out there. It's a property that I love. It's the Firefly board game. Is so over-designed that it's almost impossible to play it, and it sure doesn't play in an hour or two. You're going to play like 9 weeks to play one turn of that game, right? Keep your game simple and make it fun, okay? Like, people like Doctor Who as a property in a universe, enjoy that, right? But just keep it simple and don't think you have to make it too complicated. One of our most popular games is that Canine game that I showed you guys, because it can be played by adults in about 15 minutes. And when you want to sit down and just have a fun, quick game, you can play it 2 or 3 times. And it's as simple as like moving forward or backwards, right? But if you have to deal out cards and figure out who's moving, it'll complicate the game and also add how much time people need in order to play in the game. So keep it simple. That's my advice. And one other thing with keep it simple, play test, play test, play test. Invite your friends to play the game. And if something doesn't work, listen to them. Okay. Don't have the opinion that because you made the game, it's automatically good and it works that way. If your friends are telling you, I'm not having fun because this thing comes up all the time and we keep losing, you need to change that or they're not going to enjoy the game. So
all right, John, do you have anything?
Yeah, along those lines, the killer mechanic in this game is the order in which people act, which is totally Doctor Who. It's talkers first, then movers, running around, running away, then do something, then fight. That's totally Doctor Who. Torchwood, not so much, but it's totally Doctor Who.
Great. This has been an awesome panel. And it just gets me excited for the chance when we do get to meet in person again and try out some of these games I have played at conventions before. I would really like to see Journey to the Center of the TARDIS at some point when I get a chance. Any last minute thoughts from anybody?
I do want to say, make sure you go and check out the game room at these conventions. In 2019, Greg Austin, who plays Charlie Smith in the TV show Class, came to the game table and played in the Doctor Who role-playing game with us. And we played Adventure, which Libby actually created and ran, in which what happens after the events of the TV series Class. And he played his character in the game with the other people at the table, which was awesome. So
it was a great moment.
Yeah. So play Doctor Who with some of the people in Doctor Who. You just never know what's going to happen at some of these conventions. And Console Room is the perfect convention for something like that to happen because it's not such a big convention like San Diego Comic-Con that you never see anybody. But at Console Rooms, you see the guests walking through the halls and they might be in the game room playing some of these games. So check it out. So,
Libby, John, any last minute comments from either of you?
Well, just game on, and if you're in town here, check out check out Saturday Night Space Opera.blogspot.com and ask for some Doctor Who.
Great.
Yep. We hope to see you guys at the game table soon.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the participants. Thank you to the viewers. Stick around on YouTube. You should find a link to our Doctor Who Jeopardy. And while you're there, like our YouTube channel, join our Who It Yourself Facebook page, join the Console Room page, and we hope to see you at both Console Room and Chicago TARDIS when it's safe to do so. Thank you, everybody.